Somewhere above the clouds, a passenger has just taken a bite of chicken, and it tastes like cardboard. They'll blame the airline. They'll blame the chef. They'll blame airplane food, as if bland meals are simply part of flying. But here's the mystery. That exact same dish, cooked by the exact same chef, with the exact same ingredients, would have tasted completely different just a few hours earlier on the ground. Nothing about the meal changed. You did. And hidden inside that disappointing bite is one of the strangest food science mysteries ever solved. A discovery that transformed how airlines feed millions of people every single day.
Every year, airlines serve more than 5 billion meals around the world. Some are designed by Michelin-starred chefs. Others are prepared in catering kitchens so vast they can produce tens of thousands of meals before sunrise. Every recipe is tested, measured, and refined with incredible precision. Yet, despite all that effort, airline food has become the punchline to countless jokes. Dry chicken, rubbery pasta, bread that's somehow stale and soggy at the same time. For decades, the explanation seemed obvious. Airlines were cutting costs. The food was overcooked. The ingredients weren't fresh enough. It made perfect sense. Except it wasn't true. Because researchers kept encountering something that shouldn't have been possible. The very same meal that tasted balanced and flavorful inside a test kitchen could become bland, muted, and strangely disappointing just hours later after takeoff. Nothing in the recipe had changed. The ingredients were identical. The chefs were the same. So where did the flavor go? The answer wasn't hiding in the kitchen. It was hiding inside the airplane.
If you've ever flown on a long-haul flight, there's a good chance you've seen it happen. The passenger beside you orders a tomato juice. Not a soda, not a coffee, not even water. Tomato juice. It's one of the last drinks many people would choose in everyday life. Walk into almost any restaurant and you'll rarely see someone casually ordering a glass of it. Yet high above the clouds, flight attendants pour it by the thousands every single day. Why? For years, nobody had a satisfying answer. Passengers assumed it was just tradition. Airlines assumed it was coincidence. But the numbers told a different story. Some airlines discovered they were serving astonishing amounts of tomato juice every year, far more than anyone expected for a drink that seemed so unpopular on the ground. It wasn't a marketing campaign. It wasn't a trend. Something about flying was changing what people wanted to taste. At first, airlines blamed the catering. Perhaps the recipes weren't seasoned enough. Perhaps reheating was destroying the flavor. Perhaps airplane foods simply couldn't compete with a freshly cooked meal. It sounded reasonable. But then, something strange happened. Scientists recreated airline meals on the ground, using the exact same ingredients, the same recipes, and the same cooking methods. The food tasted perfectly normal. Only after it was eaten under flight-like conditions did the flavor begin to disappear. That was the moment researchers realized they had been asking the wrong question. The mystery wasn't why airline food tasted bad. The real mystery was why our senses behaved differently in the sky. Somewhere between the runway and cruising altitude, the human body was quietly rewriting the rules of flavor. And if they could understand how that happened...
The first suspect wasn't the chef. It wasn't the recipe. It wasn't even the food. It was the air. At first, that sounded absurd. After all, an airplane cabin feels comfortable enough. You can read a book, watch a movie, even fall asleep. It hardly feels like an extreme environment. But appearances are deceptive. Outside your window, the temperature can plunge below -50 degrees Celsius, and the air is so thin that a person couldn't survive without a pressurized cabin. To keep passengers safe, modern aircraft create an artificial environment inside the cabin. The catch? It isn't the same environment your body evolved for. Although your plane may be cruising at nearly 35,000 feet,
The cabin is typically pressurized to feel like you're standing on a mountain between 6,000 and 8,000 feet above sea level. That's high enough for your body to notice. Not dramatically, quietly, without asking permission.
That's where the mystery finally starts making sense. Most people believe taste happens on the tongue. It doesn't. Your tongue can only detect a handful of basic tastes: sweet, salty, sour, bitter, and umami. Everything else, the rich aroma of fresh coffee, the buttery smell of popcorn, the sweetness of a ripe strawberry, the comforting scent of warm bread, is identified by your nose. As you chew, hundreds of microscopic aroma molecules rise from the food and travel to receptors high inside your nasal cavity. Your brain combines those aromas with signals from your tongue to create what you experience as flavor. It's an illusion your brain performs thousands of times every day, until the cabin air dries everything out. Suddenly, fewer aroma molecules reach those receptors. The orchestra loses most of its instruments. What's left is a flatter, quieter version of the same meal.
By this point, scientists thought they had cracked the case. Lower pressure weakened the senses. Dry air robbed the nose of its ability to detect aromas. Mystery solved. Except one flavor refused to follow the rules. It wasn't getting weaker. In some cases, it seemed to become even more satisfying. That flavor is called umami. If you've never heard the word before, you've almost certainly tasted it. It's the deep, savory richness of a slow-cooked beef stew, the satisfying bite of aged Parmesan cheese, the earthiness of mushrooms, the richness of soy sauce, the depth of a perfectly ripe tomato. Unlike sweetness or saltiness, umami doesn't scream for your attention. It lingers. It adds body. It makes food feel comforting and complete. For decades, chefs had relied on it instinctively.
If you've ever sat near the wing of an airplane, you know the sound. It begins as a low rumble during takeoff. Then, once the aircraft reaches cruising altitude, it settles into a steady roar that never truly disappears. Most passengers stop hearing it after a few minutes. Not because it gets quieter, because the brain learns to ignore it. Or at least, that's what we thought. Around the late 2000s, researchers began asking an unusual question. Could sound itself influence the way we experience flavor? It seemed almost ridiculous. After all, hearing and taste are completely different senses. Or are they? Scientists invited volunteers into carefully controlled experiments. They served the exact same foods under different sound conditions. Sometimes participants ate in silence. Other times, they listened to recordings of aircraft cabin noise through headphones, roughly 80 to 85 decibels, about the same volume as a busy city street or a constantly running vacuum cleaner. Nothing about the food changed. Only the sound. The results surprised everyone. Sweetness became noticeably weaker.
Saltiness also faded, but foods rich in umami seemed even more satisfying. Researchers discovered that our senses don't work independently. Instead, the brain constantly combines information from our eyes, ears, nose, and tongue into a single experience. This phenomenon is known as cross-modal perception. In simple terms, what you hear can change what you taste. For years, airline food became the butt of endless jokes. People blamed lazy chefs, cheap ingredients, cost-cutting airlines. But the truth was never that simple. The food wasn't failing. Your senses were adapting. 35,000 feet above the earth, your body enters one of the strangest environments it will ever experience. The air dries your nose. The cabin pressure softens your perception of flavor. The endless roar of the engines quietly changes the way your brain interprets taste. Even stress, fatigue, and jet lag become invisible ingredients in every bite. And yet, despite all of those obstacles, despite physics working against every recipe. So the next time someone says airplane food is terrible, you'll know they're only telling half the story.
Because the mystery was never hiding inside the meal. It was hiding inside the passenger all along. If you enjoyed uncovering the hidden science behind one of the world's most misunderstood meals, subscribe to Food Tale. Every week, we reveal the forgotten histories, surprising science, and extraordinary stories hiding behind the foods we eat every day. And before you go, tell us in the comments, what's the strangest food you've ever eaten on a flight? And did it taste completely different than it does on the ground? Until next time, keep wondering and keep tasting the world a little differently.